Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Manny Cabo, and welcome to another episode of Mojo for Musicians.
All right, everybody, we are alive and kicking and ready for another killer episode of Mojo for Musicians. And just another reminder, everyone, please share this podcast with any musicians that you feel need that inspiration or that extra push to live out their musical passions. And yes, definitely keep those subscriptions, ratings, and reviews coming so I can keep getting this podcast out into the world, because today's episode is on a very special and important topic that at some point in our careers, and I don't care what your calling is, especially musicians, we run into, which is that ever so popular, quote unquote, creative rut. And I've got some nuggets that I want to drop on you guys with respect to properly combating these moments where, simply put, we just got nothing. And here's the truth. It's okay. Just don't beat yourself up, because sometimes we just literally have to take a step back. And with that being said, let's dive right into some of the ways that I know I've implemented throughout the years that have certainly helped me get over that hump on multiple occasions. So the first thing I want to address, and this is with a huge caveat, is that being a musician or any type of creator can be a lot of fun and very fulfilling. And I know, because I've had some life-changing and impactful moments that have catapulted my life into a higher tier of opportunities from performing on network TV. But conversely, I've also had some pretty challenging moments where my songwriting became somewhat stale or repetitive, the set lists were rather monotonous, and hardships with fellow musicians. And I just felt like I was going through the motions. And this is where frustration starts to set in. And we as artists are very emotional creatures, as I said many times to begin with, and can easily forget the why factor, meaning the why we began this journey in the first place. We embarked on this, let's just say, capricious journey because we have this innate passion for it. But with passion, we also have to attach patience to it. And this can be a very, very tall order. I know, because God knows I am the furthest thing from a patient person. But thankfully, my dad instilled that value, actually that much needed value, later in my life. And it's not easy to stay creative with respect to your art. It's even more important to stay creative with keeping everything fresh, and more importantly, keeping your momentum. And that's why I wanted to create an episode around this stigma that we sometimes flirt with. And unfortunately, many keep spiraling down that rabbit hole because soon enough frustration and desperation sets in, and you never wanted to get to that point. So I've got a couple of tips here that will help you evade those landmines that can cause us to deter our drive. The first one, and I feel is the most important one, is to breathe. And I alluded this in my last episode, ironically, so this is a perfect segue. And give yourself permission to suck for a moment. And you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about, Manny? I don't want to suck. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Take that needed pressure off and accept the fact that we are human and cannot, and I repeat, cannot always be on top of our game. So if you're sucking right now, then write a sucky song and get it out of your system. Perhaps make it a funny song. And you'd be surprised, once you remove that facade of limiting beliefs, then you could start clearing the fences with great ideas. The truth is, guys, what you resist will in fact persist. Listen to that and repeat that. What you resist will persist. The more you keep draining in your head, this is terrible, or I suck, or what the hell is wrong with me, etc., the more you condition your subconscious mind into thinking that it's truth. And you couldn't be further from it. There have literally been studies made that once you convolute the creative rut and obliterate those self-imposed pressures and expectations. And I know, trust me, because I've done it multiple times. And just accept that you're in the suck mode right now because your mind is telling you to take a step back. Something wonderful begins to happen. You break those chains that are actually holding you back. So my point is, instead of entertaining your, let's just say, inclination to be negative, you should be embracing and being grateful that your mind is telling you it's your time right now to pause. Nothing more, nothing less. We all forget that our hardships, our frustrations, our mistakes are all necessary components of success. The next tip that has certainly helped me immensely to not only stay creative, but also expand on my producing skills is to immerse yourself in different genres of music. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've been stuck on a song and have been lifted out of that quicksand by a certain riff, a melody hook, or even a sample from a completely different genre of music. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're a rock singer or a country artist, try listening to some hip hop or Americana. If you're a pop singer or an R&B singer, then try listening to some rock or classic rock. Hell, I'd even try listening to some classical music, even if it is just to relax, because there's been so many occasions where I've been influenced by an amazing and beautiful piece of classical music. Now, I'm a huge Bach and Beethoven and Vivaldi fan, and because of that affinity, I've gone so far as to adding strings to a certain section of my song or gain the inspiration to even add more piano per se. The point I'm trying to make here is not only does your brain need the diversion, especially after, say, mixing a production for 12 or 13 hours like I've done in the past, your ears just simply get tired. You have to allow them some silence and transition, because then everything just starts sounding like mush to the point where sometimes you even end up working backwards, if that makes any sense, because you start questioning what you've done up until this point. So definitely start educating your ears with a more diverse approach to music and listen to everything out there and think outside the box, or your genre in this case, because the fact of the matter is so many artists over the years have even managed to reinvent themselves because they embraced other genres and drew upon those influences. Now, over the years, I've always experienced a new creative light when involving an additional co-writer or co-producer, or even joining or contributing to a different project altogether. Because remember, deviation is a good thing. I feel like I got to be like, the psychiatrist here, because it's true, deviation is certainly a good thing. Now, granted, many have their defensive postures about including someone else, always upholding the adage of too many cooks in the kitchen. I get it. But my rebuttal to that is, if you're stuck, then what the hell have you got to lose? And perhaps having a different perspective toward your idea, or having them inject or impart a different idea altogether, could be just the jolt that you need to jumpstart the creative juices again. So one piece of advice is, don't ever let your ego limit any opportunity for growth or expansion, because the only one who loses is you. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And so many amazing pieces of music could have been created had that not happened. As an athlete all my life, I've always embraced the teamwork mentality. And I've also felt that it's gratifying where there's a collective gain in the project, because that only promotes future successes and enhances that whole team environment altogether. And some of the best collaborations have come from being stuck or allowing yourself to accept the fact that you need help. Again, let go of the ego and remember to have fun in the process, guys. Music is supposed to be fun, so don't ever forget that. Moving on to tip number 4. Now, this one is probably the most obvious one. And again, I don't care what your calling is. We all deserve a vacation. And it doesn't have to be for an extended period of time. Sometimes just a few days with a new ambience is all you need. The point is, just give yourself some leisure and time to unleash. Hell, I've taken up to 2 years off because I just completely and utterly felt burned out. And when my dad just recently passed, I literally took 4 months off because I knew there were other priorities which would only get in the way of my creativity anyway. So sometimes you have to be strong enough to make an executive decision, which is usually the right decision, and listen to those distractions and what your body is trying to tell you. Has it ever occurred to you that these blockages are some sort of cosmic 2x4 that sometimes needs to hit you over the head to remind you that we're human? And it's a necessity that we segregate ourselves from the everyday hustle and bustle of life. For me, there's nothing like new scenery, new music, new people, and new experiences to rejuvenate the creative flow and the process and breaking that monotony. And lastly, I want to remind you guys to pace yourself and stop worrying about the end result, because I've done that a million times and I've lost so many incredible moments that just pass me by instead of enjoying the journey. Remember, guys, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you got to get out of your head and into your heart. So listen to your body and what your brain is trying to communicate with you. And again, here's Daddy Manny repeating the important takeaway, which is be patient. Because once you're ready for those opportunities, they will reveal themselves to you. And that's a promise. Be patient with people. Be patient with your craft. And above all, be patient with yourself. And if I can't convince you to follow these steps, then I'm sure my guest today certainly will. So whether you're on the road driving, on the treadmill, or just chilling with your best bottle of red, just sit tight. Don't go anywhere, because I've got a fun one for you when we return.
You're listening to the Mojo for Musicians podcast. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show to share your mojo with us, visit mannycabo.com and send us an email in the contact section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. And now, back to the show.
All right, now that I've got my Mojo Maniacs back in the audience, I can't wait to introduce to you my next guest, who is a Grammy Award-winning engineer / producer who's been making hits for over 3 decades now, working with such icons like Prince and Michael Jackson, Justin Timberlake, Herbie Hancock, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and the list goes on. He's mentored over 15,000 aspiring audio engineers, musicians, and songwriters, and is also the author of Hypnotic Music Secrets that makes music feel irresistible. And what artist doesn't want that skill? So let's welcome to the show an incredible artist in his own right, Mr. Khaliq Glover, or as he's known in the industry, CalicoVision. What's going on, Khaliq, and welcome to the show, my brother.
Hey, what's up, Manny? How you doing, man? It's such an honor to be here, man. I can't wait.
It's great to have you, man. You know, it's so funny. I still have in the original box the entire CalicoVision game system. You know, we're talking full controllers, the whole nine. So when I read that, I was like, yes, this was certainly meant to be. That's too funny. Where'd you get that name from, actually?
You know, it was a funny story.
They usually are.
When I was working at Lion Share Studios, I worked at a studio called Lion Share Studios back in the 80s for country music icon Kenny Rogers. He owned the studio.
Right.
And it was one of the premier studios in the world, and we had a lot of high-end clients and engineers that worked there. One of the guys in particular, who is David Foster's personal engineer that did almost all the projects, and his name was Humberto Gatica. And I was working with them on some project because I got shuffled in and out on a lot of different things. Right. And one day he just happened to say, "Hey, what's up, CalicoVision?" You know, and that's when the CalicoVision game was out there, the video game and everything. You know, they had Nintendo, CalicoVision, and some of the other ones. And he said that, you know, at first I wasn't sure if I liked it because it was, you know, it was a little cheesy kind of video game. But then the more I thought of it, I was like, you know what? I kind of like that. I said, I'm going to take that on because that makes me stand out as opposed to just Khaliq Glover. So that's where that came from. Humberto Gatica.
You're like, man, I'm a Grammy award-winning engineer. I don't need no 8-bit music underscoring my entrance as I walk in, man.
No, it wasn't Grammy back in them days. But I'm glad because, like I said, it helped me stand out rather than just my name. Everybody else had their name on it. I'm like, CalicoVision. Okay, that'll that'll stand out. Even you remember it.
No,
So that's
see,
cool.
I do. I like it, but I might be a little bit biased because I'm a video gamer. So yeah, man, when I read that, I was like, that's too funny. And it's so funny because Raven is your biggest cheerleader, man. And thankfully, she's the one who got us to do this interview together, as well as inviting me on her show, which goes to show you the power of networking. And you truly never know who's listening. So thank you, Raven, when you listen to this.
Raven, the talk show Maven. That's my baby. She's amazing too.
She really is.
When we first met and everything, and I used to watch and listen, and even to this day, I listen to her do her thing, and she's just such a natural, and she's such a giver, and I mean, she was made to do this.
She really, she truly was. When I listen to her, it's like, yeah, I believe her. Even if she's lying to me, I'll believe her. She just sounds like she knows what she's talking about. And she is. She's very receptive, very kind-hearted. So I'm grateful to have met her on Clubhouse. So listen, tell me what's going on in your world and what exciting things you're working on right now.
Well, it's interesting. I've been doing this now for since 1982. So, right. 39 years.
You've got some tenure, man, definitely.
Yeah. And, at this stage of my life, for me, it's about passing on and giving back, because that's a lot of what got me started was, I have to say, while I feel I've got some talent and insights and everything, but more than anything, I've got blessings from God just looking over me, putting me in the right situations with the right people, and people just trying to help me through and get me to that next level. So it's my responsibility to pass it on. So these days I've been working with up and coming artists behind the scenes, a lot of indie stuff. And I'm in particular working with a new record label that's coming up. They're called Love Conquered Records, or LC Records for short. And this record label is trying to change the industry as far as the approach, rather than the normal record label thing, where they're trying to be supportive and split revenue as opposed to giving you just a mere pittance of your creation. You're trying out a new model where it's actually more of a 50-50 kind of thing, or close in there, after expenses and things like that. Because it's like, well, that's only fair. The business can do one side of it and the creator does another side. Then we split what comes in, know. And so I'm really trying to help them, because I think that's a more fair model. And also, they're very big on artist development. So a lot of people who would not ever get a chance or ever even get looked at, we're looking at people like that and trying to help them develop, even if they're not ready, if they've got something unique and maybe positive to make an impact out in the world. Behind the scenes, we're helping them make their songs better, to write, to craft, to learn. As you well know, Manny, song crafting is what it's about. Everybody's so much into making beats and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's about the lost art of song crafting, knowing how to dig in and take apart lyrics, how to take apart songs section by section, so that every single moment of a hook is happening. They did a study, and the attention of a goldfish is like 9 seconds. The attentions of humans are like 7 seconds. So we're less than goldfish. So we got to keep them listening and keep them engaged.
Well, no, those are all noble gestures, and believe me, especially in the direction that it's going, unfortunately, hasn't been that way, as we all know with the record labels. They've got nothing but a bad rap, and rightfully so, because it's true, man. Listen, we are the artists. We're the ones that are creating the magic. And I think we lost a lot of that magic over the years. We lost the whole dissecting of a song. And that's why I loved Nashville so much, because they still believe in the power and the construction of a song, from the story to the lyrics to the music to the hooks to the bridges to the, you name it. So I completely,
every part of it.
Yeah, man, I agree, and I understand where you're coming from. And I got to tell you, I'm excited. This is going to be a pretty awesome episode, because it highlights those moments where we kind of lose our creative prowess, and we've all been there, whether we call them, I don't know, dry spells or writer's blocks or what have you. And there's always a point in our career where we just certainly need to take a step back and regroup or refocus. And perhaps, to me anyway, finding inspiration outside comes from, different comfort zones, or stepping outside of your own element, and I know you've experienced that with the array of artists that you've dealt with from so many genres that you have worked with over the years. So I figure what better person to ask than somebody who has certainly covered all genres from country to hip hop to contemporary jazz, where you actually won a Grammy, by the way, and commercial pop. So I might as well ask you my first question, if that's okay.
Yes, do it.
Can you remember any specific moments where you were plagued with a creative blockage of some sort, and how did you overcome it, if in fact you did, and do you still experience them today?
Okay, that's a great question. And this is one I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, because everybody goes through the periods, and how you get out on the other side is very important. And here's what had happened for me, and it's happened over and over again throughout the decades of my life. But it actually started when I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in the hood where we play black neighborhood. We listened to and played, because I'm also a guitar player. I started out as a guitar player before I was an engineer, and I had bands and stuff like that. So we were an R&B group that went around and played a lot of cover stuff and all that. So a lot of the stuff that I was influenced by in my neighborhood was strictly R&B and the things that I heard, a little bit of jazz and everything. But that was all I knew. And the turning point for me, believe it or not, was one day I met a friend in my neighborhood, and he was a music major at Duquesne University. And one day he invited me to his house to listen to some music back when they had vinyl imports, the vinyl record albums. He used to get imports from Europe and everything. And he broke out some stuff for me and played for me. So the first thing he broke out was a group called Vandergraaf Generator. And then another group called Gentle Giant. Then another group called Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And then another group called Yes and Genesis, and groups like that, all from England. Back in the day, I mean, a lot of these groups ended up becoming, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame these days now. But back in that day, they were just kind of getting going, and this was called progressive rock, and nobody really knew about it. And I knew nothing about it, but it changed my life, especially the group Yes. I became fanatical about Yes, because I had never in my life heard anything like this. They could be funky like an R&B band, but then break into some classical stuff, break into rock, break into flamenco, everything crammed into one song. So that changed my life and completely, because I was stuck in a rut doing R&B, and I loved R&B and everything, but everybody and nobody stood out. So I immediately, and I got to tell you, I was a band leader, and my band hated me because I made my band sit down and learn all kinds of Yes songs. There was a particular album they had called Close to the Edge, and I was trying to make them learn this whole album. I learned the guitar parts that I never thought I could play. Siberian Katru was one, and Close to the Edge, and a lot of things like that. Roundabout.
Yeah,
stuff
Roundabout's
like
an amazing song.
Nobody had ever heard this stuff in my neighborhood like this. So I actually made our band play it in a club. We were playing other stuff like the Isley Brothers and Ohio Players and stuff like that. But then we throw in some Yes. And everybody was looking at us like, what the heck is all this? But they loved it. It was so different. They had never heard anything, never seen anybody attempt it. We got standing ovations and stuff like that. They had never heard anything like that. That is what carried me throughout my life. Because as I went forward in life, when I ended up working at Lion Share Studios for Kenny Rogers, I never listened to country music, never liked it. But because I was working for a country music star, I had to get in and learn a little bit about it. And I got thrown on some sessions, and I learned to appreciate song crafting. And this is how you get out of ruts, is you just got to expand your palette and learn about things from past, present, and future, and don't discard anything. It'll get you out of any rut as long as you open your mind and don't get stuck in where you've been used to, your comfort zone. So I got pulled out of my comfort zone and purposely pulled myself out of comfort zones many times, and still do to this day.
Wow, that's brilliant. And I always preface every one of my episodes with my top tips of what has helped me overcome those creative ruts. And one of those was definitely listening to other genres of music, because, I'm a full-blooded, Kraft cheese American, but my roots are Latin. You know, my mom's from Puerto Rico, and my dad, rest in peace, from South America. So I grew up on a really steady dose of the Beatles, of salsa, Latin folk music, you name it, Motown. So the best thing that happened, yeah, exactly. The best thing that happened to me was the diversity in different sounds, different instrumentation, you know, the skills of the musicians themselves, how each and every genre plays scales differently. You know, it's a different palette of music, to use your word. And truer words could not have been spoken. And as a vocal producer myself, it has helped me come up with different hooks, helped me assist other artists in the vocal booth. And I'm like, well, why don't you try this? They're like, oh, wow, I never would have thought of it like that. I'm like, that's because you haven't listened to 1960s salsa. That's a typical beat. And I played it. I'm like, oh, my God. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing because when you expose yourself, like one thing that, I mean, and I got to say, I was always kind of like the weird black kid in my neighborhood because I was always open, to, you know, where everybody was stuck into listening to this one thing. You know, I was the type of person that I would sit down and listen to like even the old tunes that were the pop music back in this day, from 30s, 40s, 50s, stuff like that. Well, that was the pop music of that day, you know. So I listened to it and studied it. So, you know, I'm driving people crazy when I'm listening to George Gershwin and stuff like that because I want to see, well, you know, how are they, you know, dealing with stuff like that? You know, Irving Berlin and Cole Porter and stuff like that. All that, because, you know, it's the same 12 notes. They're just reshuffled for the times, you know. The only thing that changes, the notes stay the same, but the rhythms change in the way the things are put together. So that's what can really keep you fresh, if you have an understanding that that's the only difference is your mindset about it.
Sure. See, you weren't weird. You were just a trendsetter of the area. That's what it was. And nobody saw that. Nobody saw the genius of Khaliq at the time. But I get you, man. And Yes is definitely a great example because their songs are, first of all, they were long songs, but they were very elaborately played and very well constructed. All that prog rock like Genesis and Rush and all, you know, music from Europe. And I basically favor European music, and they still appreciate it till this day. I mean, there's kids that are 8 years old still listening to Iron Maiden, you know, long hair, the T-shirts. Right. And I'm like, oh my God. So, you know, especially in South America too. Unfortunately, here in the U.S., music has turned too much into a business, and they've lost the passion. Maybe not the artist, but it's become a business within the industry. So we have lost a lot of those fundamentals. I don't have to tell you. I'm preaching to the choir, you know. Oh, man, that's brilliant. I mean, we could talk about this all day. So I guess that's a great segue into my next question. So thanks for sharing that. There you go, Khaliq, the trendsetter. So what were some of the biggest creative takeaways throughout the course of your career, and with whom? And how did it impact your skill or your craft, you know? Because I'm sure you came up with so many cool concepts throughout your journey.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the big things, and I already previously mentioned it, was Yes. But, you know, the thing about Yes, and here's the cutting edge, here's the sword that cuts both ways, you know. So I got into Yes, and like to this day, and you know it, anybody that studies Yes and you listen to it, you appreciate the sound and the sonics and the craftsmanship of the way the musicianship is going. But to this day, nobody knows what the hell the lyrics mean.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey, that's the truth.
Listen to John Anderson's lyrics and try to figure out, and to this day, you know, sing, bird, or pray. Beauty begins at the foot of you. Do you believe the man? What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, even Siberia goes through the motions. Hold out and hold on. You know, down the window, stuff like that.
And or then you get like 23 minutes of Fly, you know, or Fly. What was it? Fly from here.
Exactly. You know,
you can't. Can you imagine throwing that song in today's society? You imagine the attention span? Like you couldn't get away with that. You couldn't get away with like a Cashmere from Zeppelin or Carry On Wayward Son.
Well, you know what I mean. I actually think you probably could, because people really are hungry for something different when you present it to them, because that's what they used to be told back in the day. No, they used to be told that, and a lot of artists used to be told that. Even in R&B artists, Isaac Hayes was told that nobody will ever listen to the stuff on Hot Butter Soul.
Right.
You know, you have a song that's 15, 20 minutes. Nobody ever, and then it ends up being the biggest things. So
well, listen, look at Queen. Remember when?
Oh yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody and all that.
They're like, what are you talking about?
No way, And I mean, that stuff becomes legendary.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest lessons, though, that I learned from like the Yes thing was like the lyrics. Because initially I tried to, of course, I went, you copy and try to model your heroes and the things like that. So I tried to model John Anderson's lyrics. I wrote a song called Theater of War, and this is so hilarious because
it sounds like you were influenced.
Oh yeah, exactly. So when I'm talking about the government creating all these wars out there, so I write some lyrics called, I still remember some of the first things, like, show the painter poisoning the idle ranks for you, pass away the splintered times leaving endless taboos, each will offer empty in or holocaust away. Simple charm removes this street connection late. What?
Look at
what
you,
the
man.
hell? When I look back at it and say, what the, because I'm thinking I'm being real clever. They'll get it. Show the painter, the painters, the poisoning the idle race. That's the government trying to poison our minds and everything.
Right.
Pass away the splinter. That's the stuff. They'll get all that. And it's like I had to learn and then unlearn that stuff, making those crazy ass lyrics. I had to learn. Listen, just simply say you're saying the government say, okay, the government's poisoning our minds. Well, just say that.
Yeah, right,
Don't make people figure stuff. They are not going to get it, dude. But I had to go through the thing of learning how to write crappy lyrics before I wrote some good lyrics. Then I wrote a lesson from that when I first came to California and into songwriters competitions, and I wrote a song called "Gotta Dance." Real simple, straight to the point for what I wanted to do. I used to read books like about influence and stuff like that. And I just wrote a song and it simply said, "I'll bet that you gotta dance. I'll bet that you gotta dance." And then I said, originally I said, your brother and sister too gotta dance. There ain't no curfew, you gotta dance. But then I went back and changed it and said, no, women are the ones that use again. So I changed it, your mother and sister too gotta dance. There ain't no curfew. You got to dance. Simple, to the point and everything. Sure. And it got picked out of 200 songs. That and one other song got picked as the top two. It's funny when you're doing things like lyrics, crafting songs, writing. Keep it simple, go straight to the point, get straight to the emotion of what you want, and you'll win more often. And most of the hit songs, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, I've learned that too from being in Nashville. Sometimes the minimalistic approach is usually the most effective, because you're right. Some people just don't have the chutzpah hang in there with you lyrically. As powerful and as heartfelt and intelligent as the lyrics may be, unless you're in the prog rock scene, you're going to be like, what, bro, what are you talking about? What are you smoking? And save me some.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I get it. And it's so true. But good for you, man. I'm glad that you experimented with that early on in your career, because evidently it's paid off for you, because you've branched out into so many genres, and successfully, I might add. Cool. So listen, that's
what got me in many doors. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think diversity is always going to be a contributing factor to expanding anyone's career in any type of conversation in any sector, because it's all relative. The more you know about different things that are particularly of interest to different people, of course, then you're going to build your brand, build your integrity. I know it's helped me significantly in the music industry, especially talking music, because I could sit here and sing something in Spanish and then go back and pull up a riff from an old classic, Take Six song from an R&B. And here I am. I'm a rock singer, but I appreciate music. And they're like, well, how would you know that? You're like ball guy tattoos. What are you talking about? Take Six. I'm like, man, and another thing that gets in the way is the ignorant mentality of society, labeling you already, not knowing what so that can hold back a lot of people, unfortunately. But, it's the nature of the beast. You got to have thick skin, whichever way you slice it,
Well, exactly. Even to this day, people when I mentioned to them that, one of my favorite groups in the world is Yes, they're like, I never would have took you for a prog rock guy. I never
Yeah.
would have guessed that.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's funny. But and then when I tell people, I used to drive people away because I slap on some George Gershwin or some classical music. They're like, what? They don't get it. But you just got to have a broad palette of things you like to listen to.
You do. I'm a big Vivaldi fan myself, and I could literally sit here.
Vivaldi, yeah.
I could listen to some Seven Dust, then I can go back and listen to some Marvin Gaye, then I'll shuffle to the Beatles and so on and so forth. I mean, it's a very eclectic playlist, but at the same time, I think my brain needs the escape because it kind of replenishes my creative juices. It almost sets everything back to default to zero. Okay, now I could start writing the next song because I've got so many of these influences marinating in my head, right? See, I know you get it. So listen, let's get to question number 3. And I love asking this question, especially with people that are well established and accomplished, because I get a mixed percentage of answers. And that is, when do you find yourself to be the most creative? And can you share with me some of the methods that you implement to get you through those difficult and help you keep grinding through those difficult moments,
Well, the funny thing is when I get most creative are in quiet moments. So when I go to the bathroom or take a shower, all the ideas start flowing in there, or if I'm just kind of, sometimes laying in bed at night and things just start coming in or whatever. And, that usually quiet time is not really quiet time for me. So, a lot of things will come in, and then I've got to, I know I don't do it as much like I used to do anymore, but I used to always have something to be able to capture because, it'd be gone, it'd be fleeting if you don't capture it in some kind of way,
Right then and there.
You have to, and, I used to be, like I said, because I started out as a guitar player before I became an engineer and producer and stuff like that. So I used to always keep something right by me, whether it's my guitar when I was playing or when I'm writing and was writing lyrics or producing or whatever. I keep a tape recorder or some kind of way to capture the idea because it's fleeting, it'll come and then be gone right away unless you get to it.
No, I've heard, let me tell you, there is not one person who is won a Grammy, not won a Grammy, songwriter, guitar player, drummer that has not said the same thing. If you don't write down or have a little recorder with you at the time when you get that idea, 99.9% of the time, they don't care how good you think that hook is, you will forget it. So absolutely.
Yeah,
absolute truth, man. It's happened to me multiple times, and I've cursed myself to sleep sometimes. You wake up and you're like, oh, man, don't worry about it. I'll remember it. And then, sure, morning comes.
I'll remember that, yeah.
What the hell was I singing?
That's so good. I can't possibly forget that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. And most people, you learn from your mistakes. Everywhere I go, and I got either a notepad or my iPhone set to a recorder, just in case.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side of that is sometimes when you do capture it, you play it back later. It's like, what the heck was I thinking with that? You listen back.
That's nothing. That's
okay,
nowhere near what I originally had a concept. It's funny. I was just talking to my friend Earl, who's also a multi-Grammy award-winning engineer. He told me when he was mixing Brian McKnight's CD, had it not been for Brian, sleeping with a keyboard at the edge of his bed to the point where sometimes he would trip over it, we wouldn't have things like Back at One, or songs of that nature.
Yeah.
Because of that systematic and calculated approach to always being ready. And it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love Brian McKnight too, man. I worked with his with Take Six with his, family and stuff like that. But I never got to work with him.
He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys where I go see him perform live in concert. It's just him and a piano. It's like, I don't even want to sing anymore. I'm like, how do you compete with that? It's just so effortless, and he's a great storyteller too, which I love, all those iconic artists out there, they just hold their own. He's a great guitar player as well. And it's just amazing, throughout the years, the incredible talent that has surfaced, that has dominated the airways. And one of the things that they always uphold in terms of their creed for musicianship is just always be ready to record your hit, man, because you never know when it's going to come. And it's always through the quiet time. That's why I meditate. You know, some of the best entrepreneurs tell you your brain needs a rest. And when you give it a rest, it will take care of you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yep.
So listen, we're like pounding right through these. So this is actually my last question of the interview. So sad, but hey, if you got anything more to add for number 3, by all means, go for it. If not, I'm going to shift on over to question number 4.
Go for it. Yeah, we're just having fun talking.
Yeah, man. And that's what I anticipated. So question number 4 is essentially my trademark question of the show, which is, you know, what's your mojo, bro? Like, what keeps you wanting to use your word, hypnotize your audience with your mixing mastery? And now I know you've mentioned you've made a shift from doing more of the work to inspiring and giving back, which is a very noble gesture. And I'm right there with you. But what is it that keeps you in this industry?
Well, you know, what's interesting for me is the small lessons that I always remember as being the most transformational for me. Everybody thinks that there's these big things that go on, but it's little things like when I was working with Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson and on them on We Are the World. I just stood back in the back of the room, you know, just trying to be helpful or whatever. I was assisting on that project, but I was listening to the small conversations that they had. You know, it was never there's never any big things. There's always little things that give you big epiphanies and everything. And watching, you know, like when watching Michael pull out the lyrics to We Are the World, and then him and Lionel and Quincy in the room, and they stopped right away and then started dissecting the little words, you know, and changed. There are children dying, you know. I mean, maybe mixing it up or whatever because it's been so long.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Something like "Lend a Hand," and I remember the song faintly, but you know, I think everybody knows it by default. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Exactly. They stopped and changed little words on purpose to elicit and evoke emotion out of what people were hearing, as opposed to it just being a song. They could have stopped it where they were with the things with the lyrics they came in with, but they dissected little words and syllables the way they went in, and that was the big lesson for me, standing in the background, seeing, oh, you know, how they're just analyzing this for always getting the emotion, because they wanted it to be inclusive. You know, this song is not I am the world. You know, it's not about you, me, or this other person singing it. It's we are the world, and be inclusive with everybody. Sure. And they specifically,
it's a global message. Absolutely.
Yeah. And they specifically changed little details and crafted it to make that happen. And mission accomplished. We see what it did. And that's what let me know that you have to be very intentional in all this stuff, you know, when you're doing it.
While I was on The Voice, we actually recorded at Henson Studios. Jim Henson Studios, and actually sang out of the mic where you know they recorded that song. Right. So it was such an honor, and I remember sitting there just feeling really nostalgic at all the memories. And like, you know, fortunately for you, you were there, but I would have killed to have been a fly in the wall just to hear those little behind the scenes anecdotes between all the stars back in the day. You know, the Steve Perrys and the Lionel Richies. I mean, everybody that was huge at that particular stage in their career was there. You know, they were part of that project. So that must have been an honor for you, man. Wow.
It was amazing, you know. But like I said, the thing that always gets me, everybody remembers the big vocal day and all that. But for me, the biggest memories was the stuff that led up to that and after that, and during the assembly of all the things, watching and listening to Quincy Jones have his conversations about why he wanted certain people to do things. Why did they choose Bob Dylan for a certain line and choose, Ray Charles for another line? He had all this was choreographed on purpose. Yeah. You know, it didn't happen by accident, you know. And there were a lot more things in there. So a lot of great.
It was very strategic.
Yeah. And a lot of great stuff got left on the cutting floor, too, because there was a lot of other things that they just couldn't use it all in one song. So there was a reasoning why everything was done and to evoke the emotions that they wanted at the end, you know, all very strategic, you know, and that was a huge lesson to me in, you know, that it's more than just singing and playing a song, you know, it's way more than that. And that's what makes masters like Quincy Jones and all these people like that. I have to admit, like when I first, when you're young and everything, you think, oh, I can do that, until you get in the room and see it.
Of course.
It's the little subtleties that make these masters the masters that they are, that we never catch on until, age and experience adds it into you after a while. But at first you think it's easy, and it's never that easy.
No, it really isn't. And as I said before, true words could never be spoken, man. It's all the experience, and the ego always sets in our early years. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Man, well, I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure, Khaliq, and it's been an honor. And thank you so much for sharing your journeys and your talent and your story and your experiences, man. And one more thing, man, how do people find you? Anyone wants to get in touch with you and helping them make magic in their music, how are we going to find you?
Okay. I think, and the funny thing is I used to keep my websites, all that up. I've been kind of a little lax on it. But you can go to Khaliq at KhaliqOVision.com, which is KHALIQ-O-vision.com. But I'm about to get back on it, too. I want to mention the one thing, like I told you, and anybody that's listening, I'm working with a new up-and-coming label called Love Conquered Records, and we are going to be doing some great things that I'll probably reach out to you again about it. Maybe we can talk about this in the future, because this is going to be a new way of approaching how this music industry is done and how people can break through, because I really think the old model is on its way out, or needs to be dramatically changed to shift the power to the creators of the music.
Absolutely.
So I want you guys to be on the lookout for. I have what's called the Music Creators Club, and I'll be saying some more about that. It's not quite all up there yet, but I'm in the process of building that out, and I want to get as many people in as many different ways so that I can help them create their music, polish, and share all the things I've learned over the years.
Listen, any way to uplift the spirits of musicians and get some money in our pockets, I'm all in, brother. So send me some information. I'll be more than happy to share it with my community, brother. I got nothing but love for you. Thank you so much for today, and let's keep in touch. Tell Raven I said thank you, and I wish you nothing but abundance and more abundance, and then a little bit more abundance. All right, my brother.
Thank you. Same to you, my brother. You take care, and take care of everybody, and be safe.
Thanks again. Take care, Khaliq.
Thanks.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, producer, engineer, or any other industry professional wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or just want to share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So just send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. Thanks for listening.